Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doom Patrol. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's pick up Rita's situation as she finds herself in 1917 Iowa, and something that didn't even cross my mind last episode, which was idiotic of me, is like, right, Rita's gonna lose her memories. Obviously, like, everything came flooding forward, like, about her regrets, because looking back in her life, she realized, like, there were rarely any choices she ever got to make for herself. Like, a lot of stuff was kind of thrust upon her. Like, even her name, Rita Farr, that was, like, a concoction, or, like, her mom came up with, if I remember correctly, plus, like, how she got her acting career initially, and just, like, who she was, and just, like, Rita initially started this because she wanted to be a hero, especially considering where her past was, but all that got wiped away. She was able to be a clean slate. Obviously, I love that lady being like, oh, you know, if you come near me, I'll give you what's now. But if you're here just passing by, then welcome to Iowa. I'm like, I love that complete 180. But the Bureau of Normalcy pops up, and they're just like, all right, who's the person? She's like, I'm the aviator of this. They're like, all right, lady, you're going to keep lying to us, because it's like, right, it's 1917. They won't believe a woman? Yeah, right. So it's like, okay, there's that. But the Bureau of Normalcy grabbed her, and she met with Laura. And then it's when she's at the questions on the board. It's like, who are you? What are you? Why are you? It's like the questions the Sisterhood of Dada asked Vic, Cliff, and Jane last episode. I was like, that's what, because like we know that at the very least we knew at that time that Shelley Fogg, she brought up the fact is that she was, you know, held by the Bureau of Normalcy. So it's like, right, those very questions they're asking you, I guess what they're trying to do is they were trying to find like-minded people like themselves. And so they were using the Bureau of Normalcy's questions to kind of weed out people and just like kind of get cut to the core of people and trying to find people they feel like could be kindred spirits, but you need to be put on a path of like, we need to find some connection between you before we can bring you on board. Like, I think that's why they were asking those specific questions. I don't know. So I thought that was fascinating because ultimately we do meet the other member, like we do get introduced to everyone. We meet the other members of the Sisterhood because obviously, like, she doesn't remember her name, so she's just Bendy. So obviously, she's like, because of Rita's powers, she was selected as not a weapon, whereas others got selected as weapons. So she's just kind of in the mail room, and obviously, like, there's a section for like Niles Coulter. It's like, oh, he's away on mission, so hold all responses. But obviously, for her, she gets like a twinge because like, she, on some level, just like with Laura, she could remember, like, having this feeling about Niles, but couldn't remember what the purpose was. But because in her note, all it said was like, oh, Laura DeMille, Sisterhood of Dada. So it kind of all worked out because Laura introduced her to the actual Sisterhood. Like, she'd actually met them. They're the other metas that she was, like, eating lunch with because it's a very, like, I mean, to be fair, we're also talking about the Bureau of Normalcy, where it's like, right, here's all the people here who are quote-unquote normal, and all the metas, the freaks, have to eat somewhere else. And we get introduced to, like I said, Shelley, who we met, Shelley, Sachiko, Lloyd, we all met them last episode, along with Holly, because I think Holly, because like Holly, she was like asleep most of the episode until the very end when she kicks Cliff. That's about it. So like she was there, but we never got to meet Malcolm. But it was like, no, we already did. Especially the one who was like, oh, don't let him see you sweat. Yeah, I was like, immediately the moment we met him, I was like, who could he be? Right, Malcolm's the dude they met in the underworld when Rita was like, when he was like, oh, you don't remember me, and it's fine, don't let him see you sweat. I was like, yeah, that was him. I was like, fascinating. So it's like, why is he dead? Do know, like, let's not forget either, it seemed like he was older too, so amongst everyone there, he might have a normal lifespan. Because that's the interesting thing about this universe, like, most of the metas in this, like, series have, like, not immortality, because we actually don't know how long they live, but they have, like, longer lifespans. To be fair, at least amongst the Doom Patrol, it makes sense, because Niles was concocting ways to extend his life for Dorothy, so it's like, under normal circumstances, they probably wouldn't be the, like, long-lasting beings that they are, but because of Niles, you know, setting everything in motion so that they would, so he could copy their respective means of staying alive, you know, to be there for Dorothy. So, but it seems like the others might be the same way, maybe too. To be fair, that was in Shelley's mind, so their bodies might be dead. So that was all in like Shelley's head. So she probably absorbed all their consciousnesses. Yeah, I butchered that. Well, because we know Home Dude, Strong Arm Dude from Flex. We know he didn't age at all. Obviously, when we met him like years and years later, he hadn't aged. So once again, it's just interesting, like, how they come up with that, where, like, a lot of metahumans, but then others do, like, the OG Doom Patrol, they actually got older, so, like, why some people, I mean, to be fair, Flex's situation might be based on, like, because of his muscles and stuff like that, like, the way he just flexes a certain muscle and he can make stuff happen, maybe that's kept him young. I don't know, it's just, like, interesting, like, why certain metas are okay and some aren't when it comes to, like, longer lives. Whatever the case may be, the justification for this could just be, like, all they are, like, all that's left of the Sisterhood of Dada are just their consciousnesses that exist inside of, like, that pocket place, that pocket dimension of sorts, more so like her mind and her consciousness that Shelley like creates for herself, and she just invited everyone else there. So I mean, that might be explaining why Malcolm's older, because all of them would age, but they're just, maybe they're not physical. Either she brought their physical bodies into her consciousness, or like just their minds, or whatever the case may be. I'm going on a huge tangent, but it's just like my mind started racing because of that. But the Sisterhood of Dada was just meant to be like a place away from the Sisterhood of Normalcy. It was Laura's position of like, right, like, you know, it's like, oh, what happened to that stuffy Cliff Ward person I met before? She's like, oh, that bitch is off the clock. So it's like, the Sisterhood of Dada is just meant to be like a gathering, a place like, despite their struggles in life, they get to just focus on just being happy, and Laura wants to be able to give that to them. Just a place, you know, once again, they're in Shelley's mind, is supposed to be like a pocket dimension safe haven where they can just be themselves. But obviously, like, what was it? I want to say it was Holly and someone else were concocting the plans of like what we are dealing with present day. Like their big plan that we learned about last episode, that's where it started. And it seems like Rita's the one that kind of helped foster that. Like, it was there, and there were crazy, wild dreams, but it's like Rita's the one that wanted to foster it, of like, let's kind of stand up and just, yeah, like, let's kind of give into the madness of this idea. But you have Lloyd being like, yeah, like, it is easier, like, you know, like, it's a battle that some of them can't stand for, which even Rita's like, yeah, I get it. It isn't something that not everyone can afford to like stand up in this battle, but she does. She sits down and she convinces the other members of the Sisterhood to sit down with her, and they're like, you know, they just do their like just like silly nonsense. And I think that explains like all the craziness that like people were like, all the like weird lines that people like, in particular Larry's son was speaking last episode. Now, well, even part of this episode, it's because that's what their shtick is. Like, it's kind of like diving into the nonsense of it all. It's the Piffa Paffa, you know, of it all. Just kind of like go with the flow of things, and just like they have that game where they're just like mounted and they go ma ma, and then it breaks into well, for the song purposes, yeah, but not them necessarily. But it turns into like Lady Gaga's Poker Face, which I was like interesting, because if you aren't aware, they did this, not the same thing, but Lady Gaga's Poker Face was used in season 7 of The Flash. Like, basically Cisco's pseudo last episode. The reason why I say that is because the actor who plays him, Carlos, popped up. Well, him and Tom Cavanaugh, who was Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne, like, they're leaving the show The Flash, so technically the season finale was their last episode, but like Carlos had like a goodbye episode that was like episode 13, if I remember correctly. And so like him and Barry were like singing like Poker Face by Lady Gaga. So it's like, oh, just another DC property that used that song. I think that's just interesting timing. But nevertheless, it was just, you know, just having fun. And it answers the question too. Like, I was wondering, like, when they met Laura the first time, like when the audience got introduced to her the first time when she popped up at the end of an episode, I felt like her face shifting. That's why I was like, wait, is that actually Rita just disguising herself as someone else? Because I thought because of her like bendy abilities, as they would say, she would be able to shift her face. But it's like, no, that's just Laura's ability. just naturally, that's just like her ability, so she could do that. So she ends up getting the others out of there, and they run away from the Bureau of Normalcy, kind of. I mean, whether they're out, or whether they're just like hidden away, it does seem like this is the place, like, despite everything, because obviously Rita doesn't know where she's from or why she even came here, but for her, it's like, why would I even go back? You know, it's like, maybe my reason was to get the sisterhood and bring you guys with me, but it's like, yeah, like, Malcolm brings up, yeah, that device of yours is only, like, one-seater, and it's like, regardless of it, like, why would I ever go back anywhere, because I'm happy here, especially considering all that Rita kind of left behind. Yes, her friends and stuff, but also, like, all the pain, and that's the complicated thing of, like, with life, there is the good and the bad, and a lot of times it is easier to focus on the bad. I mean, for all of them, they're kind of like, their whole thing is drowning in the past and trying to find a way to move forward. That's a big part in this episode for a lot of the characters, which we'll kind of get to their sides of things later on. But for Rita, it's like, I'm happy here. Like, I don't have to deal with the pain of my past, because that can be a lot to deal with, especially because she hadn't previously found a way forward through that. So she's happy here with Malcolm, which Malcolm had traded his heart for a canary. And I love that line of, like, for him, it's a situation of, my canary, like, she flies away every morning and never really thinks about where she came from, and then she comes right back home and just, like, you know, it's like a whole, like, she has brand new eyes, like, every morning, never remembers where she was from. And it's like, Rita, you're kind of, well, Bindi, you're kind of like that. But also, it's just like, he made a paperclip into a heart, and she kind of made almost like a necklace of it and hung it inside of, like, the bird cage that is his chest. I was like, that's actually really sweet. Like, they're getting closer, but it's like understanding where Laura is, and now it makes sense why the sisterhood or Dada were so pissed, because I guess at some point Laura betrayed them. And I guess that's also part of what, maybe that's part of what Rita's trying to, like, correct, like, by doing all the time traveling, because it's all unnecessary. I brought this up with Legends of Tomorrow, like, obviously a very similar thing of, like, it's a necessary loop. Rita has to make sure that her and the other Doom Patrollers die, because if they don't die, she will never eventually go on this journey to become the time traveler she was, and wouldn't have experienced all she experienced, because I think it was a necessary part of her growth of, like, right, this all has to play out this way. It has to happen this way, because this whole thing, I think I might have brought this up before, of, like, my explanation for, like, why Rita has to do it too, because this is about not only her growth, but the rest of the Doom Patrol, like, grow because of it as well. And that's also, like, my explanation for, like, Legends of Tomorrow as well. Interesting, like, I'm bringing them up too, because it's like, yeah, these are, like, a day apart. Like, obviously this is on Thursdays, like, Legends just had its season premiere this Wednesday, so just interesting. So that's kind of a fascinating setup. I'm curious, what exactly did Laura do? Did she kind of at the end, like, toss them to the wind and decide to choose the Bureau of Normalcy to save herself? Like, is that why she came back in time? Like, was she trying to find a way to fix things without creating, like, a gigantic paradox? Why was she looking for Niles in the first place? Like, because Niles looked at her as just kind of like, oh, you disgust me, which is like, she's like the most terrible person, but it's like, which is a lot coming from Niles being who he is. So it's like, I guess maybe, like, she was kind of doing, like, I was about to reference this series called Dice. It's a manhwa. It's a webtoon manhwa. I was about to say, there's a villain in it. His name is Mu Young. I'm curious what like, oh, I'm pretending to be your friends, but it's kind of spoilers for Dice. I'm pretending to be your friends so you can gather all the necessary pieces so that I can use you for a means to an end. Like, maybe that was Laura's whole shtick or reasoning for it. I don't know. That's my immediate thought about it. So we'll see. It's also interesting too, because, like, without her past kind of bogging her down, like, Rita, like, can use her powers, like, willy-nilly. Like, it's always been a struggle for her. And obviously later on, with everyone kind of looking at her, kind of, like, freaking out, like, her powers start taking over and she started kind of blobbing out a little bit. But luckily, Malcolm was there to be like, yo, don't let them see you sweat. And all of them being together, like, she was able to reconstitute herself. So that's definitely an interesting development on that front. picking up with Cliff's situation was fascinating, because basically, like, Vic is trying to talk to him about, like, you know, what does he do, like, even being cyborg and stuff, which Cliff is like, dude, being cyborg is awesome. You get to bang whoever. He's like, it doesn't matter, but, like, why is that so... Like, he's like, dude, if you want advice about making stupid choices, you came to the wrong place, because I don't fucking care. You know, he's so wrapped up in his own shit. He popped up on those, clicked on all those pop-ups, and now he's addicted to a game. He's doing a little gambling. He's got Ginger, a cam girl, on another thing. And so he's so wrapped up in it. Like, I think maybe the point of that, too, is, like, it's supposed to be... The fact is that Cliff started kind of somewhat this way. Like, he cheated on his wife. He did all these terrible things. Like, he was so wrapped up, so full of his own, like, smelling his own damn farts. He had his head so far up his own ass that he was so focused on that. Like, the whole point was, like, now I get better for my family. And it's there, but he's so wrapped up in his own bullshit. I think that's it kind of coming full circle in that regard. Not even caring the fact is that, oh, Rita took the time travel ship. Granted, she only talked to... I mean, to be fair, none of them wanted to have anything to do with the Sisterhood Dada after last episode, but she didn't go to anyone. She didn't go to Larry. She didn't go to Jane about the whole Rita thing. It was just kind of like, went to Cliff and was like, well, if he feels this way, I guess everyone else does too, which, once again, everyone else is dealing with their own thing this episode, but Cliff decides that he's going to sell a whole bunch of stuff, like his roommate's stuff, even to the point he's putting a date with Cyborg up for auction. And it's like, right, he's lost all his money. He's like, I've sold half my roommate's stuff. And obviously talking about the journey he's had from being a bastard that he was, losing his life, but not only that, but his wife, ending up in the brain of a robot. And even at one point later on, someone's like, oh, like, someone wants his, like, what, brain, or, like, understanding, like, how his body works. He's like, oh, that's essentially like giving away my DNA. Should I? And I love the whole, like, he's got his toes and he's kind of like tiptoeing and turning the like chair around. He's like, fuck it. And so he sells himself. I'm like, that's going to come back to bite you in the ass. But it's just like, yeah, he's like, this is all I need right here. My game, my gambling, and my cam girl Ginger. And he's like hugging the monitors. It's like, wow. So that's fascinating. You got Larry talking to his son, which his son calls him out for everything he did. It's like, because of you were never father of the year. You were not there for my little league games. You were never there to help me with algebra. When mom went crazy, when Gary killed himself, like, you weren't there for me. And also, like, you know, working with the Bureau of Normalcy was kind of like, yeah, it was always, because he signed up for it himself, because it's like, it was a clear answer after everything that I went through. And, you know, because for him, it was more so like a middle finger to his dad. It's like, yeah, this is like for me to help get rid of people like you. Like, obviously, like, his childhood and everything, he spurns his dad. But then, like, Larry's like, fine, if you want to be like that, I'm done trying. Like, you might think I just abandoned you, but I did everything for your sake. I'm this radioactive person. You think I decided to spend 70 years alone, constantly wrapping myself in these bandages and unwrapping myself just so I can piss? I stayed away for your sake. That the fact is, not being able to touch another human being in all of that time. Like, at the end of the day, you might not like me or whatever, but I am your father, and I've loved you before you were born. Like, you know, not only when you were born, before, like, when I knew you were on the way. And I forgot what he was referencing something, and he was like, right, I was right beside your mom's belly, and something happened. You kicked. He was like, I've loved you ever since, and whether or not you believe it or not, that is true. So he's like, I'm done asking for forgiveness, because at the end of the day, I forgive myself, because that's been Larry's biggest issue. Like, and it's a commonality amongst all of the Doom Patrollers. There's self-hatred there. So I just thought, you know, and him finally saying that, and he's like, now I'm going to ask you, if you're feeling better, take your leave. And his son doesn't really have much to say and just leaves. Because I think it is like, you know, like, Larry had his own issues, because there was a lot stemming from it too. Like, Larry hated himself for being gay, and like, right, I'm going to have a wife and child, and like that. Now who he is, he knows, like, right, that, you know, that was an old time where that wouldn't have been acceptable, but now it is. Like, he's lost a lot. Like, the man he was in love with, he can't be with anymore, because he's gone. Like, he lived a full life, something that Larry wasn't able to do, and he thought by rekindling, it's like, no, like, I'm done trying to apologize for, yes, I did what I did, but I did it for the sake of protecting all of you, and you might resent me for it, but what was I supposed to do? It's not like I could necessarily be in your lives, like under the circumstances that I was in. You know, I did what I thought was best at the time. Yeah, like, I have regrets about it. You have regrets about it, but that's all I can do. Like I have to learn to forgive myself, and he has. At least he seems to have. But granted, I don't know whether the thing inside of him, because of this like realization, this eureka moment of just kind of this breakthrough, is reacting to that, because now it's starting to activate. He's like, I thought you were gone, but like it kind of goes to his chest, and I'm like, is it trying to find a way to come out? Because I'm like, I'd assume, there's only 3 options. There's your mouth, your asshole, and your dick hole. That's all I can, like, I can assume it can come out one of those ways. Hopefully it comes up through your mouth, because I feel like any other exit, especially your penis, that's going to fucking suck. But at least your asshole, so it's the second best option. Your mouth, I feel like, is the better. So we'll see how that turns out. Then we have Vic's situation, where, you know, still trying to figure out himself, like thinking about Lloyd's words last episode about, you know, everything that he said is just him like rehashing cliched lines from other people, because he's let other people determine like who, and more specifically why he is. He's let other people like determine that value of like who he, like why he exists, why he is Cyborg. And he goes to his mom's rocks, and he thinks about his mom, what his mom had said about like, right, going down this path like this from here on, your choices are your own. Because much like Rita, up to this point, like a lot of choices were taken from him. He never had the choice about becoming Cyborg. He embraced it, but it was like, yes, he's carrying on someone else's ideologies. His father's like, yeah, I did it for the sake of protecting you, but it's still the thing of everything Cyborg does and is just a byproduct of like, right, I'm just carrying on what my dad believed and wanted. So it's not even me. So he decides later on to get the synthetic skin, and even more so, it's like, oh, I'm doing this as Vic Stone, not Cyborg, and that's a very important distinction, you know. So it's like, right, like, why do you want synthetic skin, and how will it make your life better? Or some of the questions on it. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see, because especially because it's like, yeah, he is Cyborg and this celebrity, but it's also just a reminder of like, yeah, I just don't get to be Vic Stone anymore. I have to be Cyborg. That's all that I am, even though it's not. There's more to him than that, you know. So I just thought that was like a fascinating thing of like, you know, rediscovering who he is beyond just being Cyborg. Like, why am I Cyborg? Probably about figuring out who he is, you know, whether he, you know, and it seems like he's discounting like, I mean, do you want to ever continue being Cyborg, or do you just want to go back to being Vic Stone? For like, what he does at the end of the day is going to be fascinating. So there's that. Then on the flip side, we have Jane letting Kay go topside. Is like, right, I'll handle the others, but you go topside so that you can go get some shoes. And was it I always forget, they even said it in the episode, but is it Pretty Patty or Pretty Polly ended up coming to her and is like, oh, what are you up to? It's like, why'd you let her go topside? It's like, at the end of the day, Jane's like, all we are constructs. Like, she should be allowed to like go live her life, which instead of getting shoes, she gets on a bike and she runs into a stranger, which Jane was like, don't talk to him, he's a stranger. But he was just concerned. He's like, oh, you just want to ride a bike? I was kind of scared too, but it's like, yeah, just watch out for cars, okay? And he left. It's like, right, not every person in life is a shitty person. And it's like, right, because showing that, yeah, there are good people to people just being like, yeah, watch out, be careful, kid. That's all. Yes, she's not a kid. But it's also interesting, too, because this is our first time ever seeing Kay topside. It's the first time she's ever been topside, probably in, well, I think even Jane said it, like 70 years. Like, she hasn't been topside that long, because it's always been one of the other personalities, because they're her, you know, her defense mechanism, they're her wall. But now that wall's slowly coming down because Jane's opening up her worldview, allowing her, which the others don't appreciate it. The doctor doesn't, you know, it was her, and the secretary, and just like all the other personalities gathered, like looking at her, being like, how could you let her do that? There was too much of her. It's like, but the fact of the matter is, we've been like this for so long, like, you know, life there, I believe it was a risk worth taking. Like, she's got an opportunity, like she was able to ride a bike, like learn how to ride a bike, was able to enjoy it, the wind in her, hey, like she's been locked up in here so long with us, like let her kind of go out. And that's this interesting thing too, like none of the others had it, like none of the other Doom Patrollers had an opportunity to meet Kay. You know, maybe they'll get a chance in the future, but the others, in particular the doctor, she's not too fond of what, and I love it's like, or there'll be consequences, and I'm like, Jane's like, oh, what you gonna do? yeah, do nothing. And like she made some sick burn about her just standing there and like her ugly shoes or something like that. So it's like, so what are we going to do? And the doctor's like, well, no longer just making threats. We're going to make them actionable. So we'll see what that means. Because I guess because Jane didn't consult the rest of the personalities, because it's like she's the primary. So she's kind of taking a lot of this on her own. But it was kind of like, this is what growth and, looks like. And she's like, oh, you don't know what growth looks like. Because I guess she's trying to say like Jane is immature and just like, you don't know what real growth is. But it's like, that's kind of BS to say. Like, it's so interesting like how much has changed since they dealt with that thing inside of them, that it's like, right, we all ate a piece of it. So it's almost like you're not even if you're the primary, you ain't hot shit like you used to be. Like, we're all just as much a part of this. So like, because Jane doesn't have the opportunity to just kind of have that individualism of just kind of like, she's always kind of, it's like, no, like, even more so now, like, you're someone that's going up against the herd. Like, this is the pack mentality, and you want to be that lone wolf. You act like you're the alpha in this. It's like, no, we're all in this together. We rise or we fall together type of thing. We know what's best, and what you're doing is endangering the girl, because their very function is to protect her. So, like, and it's kind of what I brought up last episode. I think it is, like, if Kay is able to actually fully recover, like, what Jane is kind of hoping for, like, I think maybe all of them are worried, like, well, we'll go away. Like, our main purpose in life is to protect her, and if she's leaving and kind of doing it ever, like, what is our purpose in? Like, what reason would she have to keep us anymore? That maybe they're afraid, they are constructs, and maybe that they will disappear when she no longer needs them, once she's kind of acclimated to the outside world again. Maybe the other personalities might put her in positions where they'll scare her back into being that little girl locked away again. Maybe I'm like maybe I'm completely wrong about it. Maybe that's just me, overthinking like I tend to do, but it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.